Hey everyone, welcome back to Medieval Historian. Or, if you're new here, welcome aboard. And tonight, we're diving into one of the most intense, misunderstood, and genuinely terrifying jobs from the Middle Ages, being a midwife. This isn't a gentle story about women helping women. It's about risking your life, your freedom, and sometimes your soul just to bring a new life into the world. Today, when someone gives birth, there are hospitals, epidurals, trained doctors, and sanitized tools. You're surrounded by a team, maybe some mood lighting, and snacks waiting on the bedside table. But back in medieval times, you were lucky if the floor wasn't made of dirt. The midwife showed up with nothing but a sack of herbs, shaking hands, and a prayer. And if something went wrong, which it often did, it wasn't just tragedy. It could be a death sentence. So, before we begin, and before you get too comfortable, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next descent into the past. And tell me in the comments, what city and country are you watching from? And what time is it right now where you are? I'm just a nerd who loves digging into history's darkest corners, and it always blows my mind to see people tuning in from all over the world. This is why being a medieval midwife was dangerous. It always starts the same way. A frantic knock at the door, loud enough to shake you from whatever fragile sleep you've managed to steal between nightmares and chores. You sit up, heart pounding, not from fear, but from the heavy knowledge that someone, somewhere, is pushing new life into the world, and they need you to catch it. You grab your wool cloak, still damp from yesterday's fog, shove your birthing satchel under one arm and fumble for the lantern that never seems to burn quite right. Outside, the air bites. Your breath fogs as you hurry down crooked paths, past the dark silhouettes of huts and thatched roofs. The village is quiet, but the silence is deceptive. Somewhere ahead, a woman screams, and you quicken your pace, because it's not the first scream that matters, it's the last. By the time you reach the house, the noise has become a storm. Inside, it's warm but stifling, thick with sweat, smoke, and tension. The mother is already laboring hard, gripping the edge of a rough-hewn bed, her knuckles white, her lips torn from biting back cries. The husband hovers uselessly, eyes wide, mouth twitching like he wants to help, but doesn't know how. You push past him and kneel beside the woman, your hands already moving. You check for bleeding, for the position of the baby, for anything that might go wrong. You don't ask her name. You already know it. You've helped deliver her sister's children, maybe even her own. In this village, midwives don't just help with birth. They help with everything that happens before and after, quietly, gently, and with more knowledge than most priests would admit exists. But this time feels different. The baby's not turning. The mother's trembling. Something is wrong. You don't say it aloud, but it's there, hovering in the corners of the room like smoke that refuses to clear. The birth chair creaks as the woman shifts, groaning. You hand her a cloth to bite down on. You whisper prayers, not because you believe they'll work, but because they help her believe that you do. And that belief might be the only thing holding this moment together. Outside, the wind howls through the cracks in the walls. A candle sputters. You reach for the small pouch tied to your belt, dried herbs wrapped in linen, a charm etched with St. Margaret's name, a few drops of blessed oil that cost more than your monthly bread. As the contractions build, the cries grow louder. The baby isn't coming easily. You press your hands to the woman's belly and feel the resistance, the wrong angle. You've been here before. Too many times. You know what happens if the baby doesn't turn. You know what they'll say if either mother or child doesn't survive. It won't matter how much you prayed, how hard you tried, how long you stayed awake while your own joints screamed in pain. They'll say you let the devil in, that your touch killed the child, that your herbs summon death instead of life. Still, you keep working, because you're the midwife. You've brought too many lives into the world to stop now. You shift the baby, coaxing gently, whispering to the unborn child like it can hear you. Maybe it can. And then, mercifully, something gives. The mother screams one last time and the baby slips into your hands, covered in blood and hope. You hold your breath. Everyone does. Until the cry comes, loud, sharp, angry. The room exhales in relief. For now, you've done it. You've defied death one more time. But you know how quickly that can change. The baby could quiet too soon. The mother could start bleeding again. The husband could turn his grief into rage, and his rage toward you. This job never really ends. It just pauses between screams. You hand the baby to the mother, swaddle it in cloth that smells faintly of rosemary and smoke, and sit back against the wall, exhausted. You don't cry, even though you want to. You don't sleep, even though you need to. You just wait until the room settles, until you're sure no one else is going to die tonight. And then quietly, you gather your things and prepare to walk home through the dark, already knowing that tomorrow someone else will knock. You never get used to it. The blood, the fluids, the sudden silence that sometimes falls after too much screaming. Every birth is a question whispered to the gods. Will she survive? Will the baby? Will you? Because when you enter a birthing room in medieval Europe, you're not just stepping into a home. You're stepping into a battlefield. One where no one wears armor, but everyone bleeds just the same. The floor is straw and old wood, slick from hours of labor. The birth chair is stained from dozens of deliveries, some remembered fondly, others buried without names. You wipe your hands on a rag that hasn't been clean in days, light a candle that flickers like it knows how fragile this moment is, and check the mother's pulse. She's fading. Her eyes roll. Her breath catches. You shout for water, though you know it's probably cold and crawling with filth. Still, you need it, for her lips, for your hands, for the illusion of control. You've seen it before. The slackening jaw, the blood pooling under her thighs, the baby too still, too quiet. You press on her stomach, hoping to feel life. You tilt her head, beg her to breathe. You whisper her name even though she can't hear you. And then someone behind you mutters it, "Witch." It's soft, like a cough, but it lands like a stone in your gut. You don't turn. You keep working. But you hear it again, louder, this time from the mother's sister. She used the black oil, she hisses. She said a charm before she touched her. And just like that, the room turns. Because this isn't just a failed birth anymore. It's a mystery that demands a villain. And the woman with the herbs, the one who came in the night with strange words and steady hands, is the easiest one to blame. You try to explain. You tell them the mother was too weak, the baby breach, the blood too fast. But no one's listening. They're remembering all the other times, the miscarriages, the infants who didn't cry, the women who never healed quite right. They're stringing them together like beads on a necklace of guilt, and it's already hanging around your neck. You clean what you can. You tuck the child in a blanket. You close the mother's eyes. You leave the house without being asked. Outside, the wind has picked up. You pull your cloak tighter and walk quickly, head down, not looking at the faces in the shadows. Because once someone says the word witch, it never really goes away. It clings to you like the blood under your fingernails. And you know, deep down, that tonight wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. the contents of your satchel wouldn't impress anyone today. No gleaming instruments, no sterile gauze, just bundles of dried herbs tied with twine, a small worn knife, a length of linen, a sliver of beeswax candle, a carved wooden cross, and a pouch of ash and salt. To most, it looks like the bottom of a broom closet. But to you, it's your arsenal, your armor in a world where every birth is a battle. Each item has a purpose, even if no one else sees it. The herbs calm nerves, ease contractions, stop bleeding. The knife has cut more cords than bread. The linen wraps both newborns and corpses. It's not just what you carry, it's what you know, when to use pennyroyal and when to avoid it, how to rub in mugwort without letting anyone see the sigil scratched on the underside of the leaf, which prays to whisper when the mother begins to slip away. And let's not forget the charm, a little bundle of hair, herbs, and bones wrapped in cloth. Some call it superstition, others call it sorcery. But to a midwife, it's insurance. Against what? Spirits, curses, bad air, or maybe just fear, because fear can poison a birth faster than infection. And sometimes, all a woman needs is to believe you're in control, even if you're just guessing. The tools are extensions of your skill, but also of the role you play. You're a medical provider in a world that doesn't recognize medicine. You're a woman with knowledge in a society that punishes women for thinking too much. You use what you can, whatever you can. You keep the knife sharp, not just for cords and bandages, but in case you ever need to defend yourself from more than a difficult labor. There are places where midwives have been dragged from homes and tied to posts for the things found in their bags. The same rosemary and angelica you use to soothe pain can be turned into accusations of witchcraft. If a baby dies and your charm was seen near the cradle, it's not grief. They say it's a curse. If the mother screams and you give her a tea to calm her, they wonder what you slipped in. If you're too confident, you're dangerous. If you're too quiet, you're hiding something. Still, you carry your tools. You wrap them carefully. You check them often. Each time you head out, you wonder if tonight will be the night someone demands to see inside. And if they do, will they see what you see? A healer's lifeline, or a witch's kit? Because in the world you live in, it doesn't take much to shift from wise woman to accused, and even less to become convicted. But the tools stay with you, because you know they work. You've delivered breech babies with nothing but slippery hands and wild instinct. You've stopped bleeding with a handful of crushed yarrow. You've coaxed life from blue-lipped infants with warm milk and desperate prayers. Your kit may be small, but it holds everything between life and death. And every time you open it, you risk something more than failure. You risk being seen, truly seen, as a woman who knows more than she should, and in this time that's the most dangerous thing of all. The birth chair. It sounds ceremonial, noble even, but in truth it's more of a wooden ordeal than a throne. There's no cushioning, no gentle design, just a low, three-legged seat with a hole in the middle and handles on each side. It creaks, it tilts, and it offers no dignity. And yet, for centuries, it was the chosen battlefield where women met both life and death, often at the same time. It's where you place the mother once she's too tired to stand, but too desperate to lie down, where her screams echo through the room, where your hands reach beneath her into the dark, wet unknown, hoping this time won't end in silence. You've helped women onto that chair who've already lost 3 children. Women who know that sometimes the blood doesn't stop, no matter how many prayers are said. You've seen the legs shake, the breath catch, the head loll back in exhaustion. You've seen hands clutch the arms of that chair until splinters drew blood. You know what it means when the cries go from steady to wild, when the gasps turn sharp and distant. That chair has held hope, and it has caught death. There are moments where you hate the thing, where you want to smash it to splinters, because you know that what happens there could define the rest of your life. If the baby is born healthy and crying, you're praised, briefly. If not, the whispers begin. The chair doesn't protect you. It's just the stage on which fate performs, and you're the only one in the room without a script. Even when it works, the damage lingers. Women walk away from that chair changed, torn, bruised, broken in ways no one speaks of. You wrap their wounds. You speak softly, but you can't fix everything. And sometimes they die anyway. Slowly, quietly, days later. And everyone remembers who was holding their hands when they screamed. You've sat in silence, wiping down the chair after a failed birth, trying to ignore the blood pooling on the floor. You've scrubbed the wood until your fingers blistered, trying to erase the memory of a child who never cried. The chair is unforgiving. It doesn't care about skill. It doesn't reward kindness. It simply holds the weight of generations, of pain and risk passed down like heirlooms. You can't refuse the chair. The villagers expect it. The mothers endure it. And you carry it in your mind. Every creak, every grip, every scream etched into your memory like scars. It's not just a tool. It's a sentence. And every time you lift a woman onto it, you know you're asking her to sit in judgment. Not from God, not from nature, but from the people outside that room, who will decide what kind of woman you are, based on what happens on that unforgiving slab of splintered wood. You know the moment. Every midwife does. It's when the screams, once wild and ragged and full of fight, start to fade. Not because the baby's been born, not because the pain has passed, but because something's gone wrong. At first, it's subtle. The laboring mother, once tense with effort, slumps just a little too much. Her groans slip into whispers. Her eyes flutter, not with exhaustion, but with surrender. The room, once a cacophony of urgency, goes strangely still. And in that awful quiet, you feel it. Death brushing past your shoulder like a cold wind. You try not to panic. Panic is contagious. And you're the only one in the room who's allowed to pretend everything is still under control. You press your fingers to the mother's wrist. Weak pulse. Her skin is damp and clammy. You raise her legs. You massage her belly. You whisper to her like she can hear you from the place she's drifting toward. The family stands nearby, silent, watching. Some have tears already welling. Others are just stunned, as if they can't quite believe that birth and death are allowed to walk this close together. Then there's the baby. Maybe it came early, too early. Maybe it's still inside, tangled, stuck, refusing to enter a world that doesn't seem all that welcoming. Or maybe it's already out, lying still, its tiny limbs too quiet, too pale. You know what to do. Rub the chest, clear the mouth, slap the soles of the feet. But sometimes it doesn't matter. You say the baptismal words under your breath, just in case. Because even a stillborn deserves a chance at heaven, and because if the priest hears you didn't, you'll be in just as much danger as if you'd summoned demons with a blood chant. The silence stretches. The mother groans once more, low and wet, and then nothing. Just her mouth, half open, her eyes rolled skyward. You reach for the linen, the one you carry for this exact reason, and gently cover her face, the baby, too, if it never cried. The family wails now, loud and sudden. They need someone to blame. They can't blame God. He's too distant. They can't blame themselves. What did they do but hope and pray? And so they look at you, the woman with the herbs, the one who said she'd help, the one who failed. You try to explain. The bleeding came too fast. The baby never turned. You did everything you could. But explanations are thin blankets in the cold of grief. They don't warm anyone. They don't bring the dead back. Someone mumbles, "She was cursed." Another adds, "It's not natural. All those births she's done. No woman should know that much." Your hands are still slick with blood, and suddenly they feel like evidence instead of effort. You gather your tools. Slowly, carefully. You leave behind the birthing cloth, the chair, the tears. You step outside into the gray light of dawn. You want to scream, or sleep, or dissolve into the mist. But you can't, because someone else will need you soon. And the next time, you'll walk into another room, carrying not just your satchel and your knowledge, but the quiet echoes of every woman you couldn't say. The door swings open with a groan, and in steps the priest. You didn't call him. You didn't have to. Death in childbirth is the one guarantee in this village that a man of God will come knocking, whether he's needed or not. He's dressed in black, of course, his robes swinging behind him like a shadow-made flesh. He surveys the room, stained sheets, scattered tools, a still mother, a still child, and his nose wrinkles like the stench of effort, and tragedy offends his senses. He mutters a prayer under his breath, a Latin phrase meant to purify the air, as if holy words can clean what blood has already soaked. You step back. Midwives always do when the priest arrives, not out of reverence, but survival. You know what comes next. He'll question, he'll look, he'll judge. Not just the family, not just the soul of the mother, but you, especially you. He asks what herbs you used, how long the birth lasted, whether the mother confessed before the pain took her. You answer as evenly as you can, your voice low, your words measured. You've seen what happens when a midwife stammers in front of a priest. The priest examines your tools. He picks up your charm with 2 fingers like it's a dead rat. "This," he says, "has no place in Christian healing." You don't answer. You don't dare. You've seen midwives stripped of their tools and their homes over less. Some are dragged to the magistrate, accused of tampering with God's will. Others vanish quietly, their names no longer spoken aloud. The priest lifts the stillborn, murmurs the baptism rites, then scowls as he asks if you did it already. You nod. You always do. The soul might have a chance now, but yours, that's a different story. He blesses the house, flicking holy water onto beams stained with life and death. He warns the family not to speak of this too widely. He warns you not to intervene where divine justice has spoken. And then he leaves, the door swinging shut behind him like a verdict. The silence he leaves behind is heavier than before. You stand in the doorway, heart thudding. You survived the birth, the death, the blame, and the priest, but only just. Every visit chips away at your standing, your safety, your right to keep doing this work. There's no counsel to protect you, no law to defend you. Just tradition, suspicion, and the thin grace of being needed more than you're feared. And if that balance tips, if one more baby dies, or a woman whispers too loudly about the herbs you gave her for cramps, or the priest decides you've wandered too close to power meant for men, then next time he comes, it might not be with prayers. It might be with shackles. It doesn't matter how many healthy babies you've delivered. It doesn't matter how many mothers kissed your hands, crying thank you through tears of joy. The one birth that ends in silence, the one time something goes wrong, is the only thing people remember. Because in the medieval mind, life and death aren't biological processes. They're punishments, tests, proof of purity or sin. And when something tragic happens in the birthing room, they don't ask what went wrong. They ask, who did it? And they don't look far. You're right there after all. The midwife, the one who touched her belly, the one who said those strange words before the pain started, the one with roots and powders and pouches no one understands. It's not science to them, it's sorcery. And if the mother dies, if the baby is born blue or marked or deformed, that's not fate. It's your fault. The whispers start first. Quiet. Careful. Did you see what she did before the child was born? I heard she used mandrake. Isn't that cursed? Her grandmother was burned, you know. These rumors grow fast, watered by grief and fear. They bloom in church pews, behind market stalls, at wells where women gather. You hear them before you see the stairs. And once people start avoiding your touch, you know it's already taken root. The worst part? You can't defend yourself. Explaining only makes it worse. If you say the bleeding was too fast, they say you provoked it. If you say the child wasn't breathing, they accuse you of stealing its soul. Even silence is dangerous. It makes you seem cunning, calculating, like someone with secrets. And maybe you do have secrets, like how to turn nettles into painkillers, or how to massage a breached child back into position, or how to stitch a torn mother in the dark with shaking hands. These things should be seen as miracles. Instead, they make you suspicious. Sometimes the blame comes from the family. Grief is a heavy thing to carry, and people will do anything to set it down, even if that means placing it on your shoulders. Other times, it comes from the priest who sees your knowledge as competition, or from jealous wives who whisper into their husbands' ears that you looked too long at the baby. Sometimes it comes from men who don't like that you have a role they can't understand or control. But sometimes, rarely, it comes from yourself. When you're alone, washing blood from your apron, staring at hands that did everything they could and still lost, a voice creeps in. Maybe if you'd arrived sooner. Maybe if you'd used more mugwort. Maybe if you hadn't hesitated. That voice is the most dangerous of all, because it knows where the blame really lives. In every failure you can't forget, and every success no one remembers. You don't get to grieve out loud. You don't get to cry in the street or scream at the sky. You keep your head down, your eyes calm, your voice steady. You keep moving, because the next woman will need you, and she'll scream your name when her time comes. But the ones who lost won't forget your face. And in a world that doesn't understand your work, fear is always more powerful than gratitude. There was a time when you were just a healer, a helper, a woman who knew when the moon was right for birth and how to use thyme and honey to bring down a fever. But that time is ending. Now they look at you and see something else, something darker, something dangerous. Because the line between wise woman and witch in medieval Europe is so thin, it's practically invisible. And all it takes is one bad outcome, one jealous whisper, or one frightened priest to push you over it. You dress like the others. You kneel in church. You mumble the same prayers and kiss the same relics. But your knowledge sets you apart. You know things that books don't teach, things passed down from mother to daughter in kitchens and back gardens, in whispered lessons and careful hands, and in a world ruled by fear and faith that makes you a threat. The church says healing comes from God, but when you save a life with plants and prayer, they wonder if you're stealing power not meant for you, especially if you're successful, especially if you don't ask permission. Some women embrace the suspicion. They lean into the mystery, letting fear shield them where respect won't. Others deny it to their last breath, swearing they've never touched a charm, never whispered to the stars. But it doesn't matter. Once someone calls you a witch, the damage is done. The word sticks. It festers. It follows you through doorways and across fields. Even if you survive the accusation, you never really escape it. You've seen what happens to those who don't. Women dragged from their homes, tied to stakes, not just in the city, but in small villages like yours. Women whose only crime was being clever with herbs or bold with their words. The trials aren't about truth. They're about control. Show us you're innocent, they say, as they throw you into a river. If you sink, you are pure, but dead. If you float, you're guilty and doomed. It's not justice, it's theater, a performance of righteousness played out on your skin. So you walk carefully. You hide your charms deeper in your satchel. You stop saying the old words aloud. You burn the dried toadstools you were saving, just in case. You ask fewer questions, speak less, smile more. But you never stop helping. Because despite everything, despite the danger and the fear, women still knock on your door. They still clutch your hand in the dark. They still whisper your name when the pain begins. And maybe in some quiet part of you, you know why they call you a witch. Not because of the herbs or the charms, but because in a world where women are powerless, you're not. Because you have seen death and dared to defy it. Because your knowledge, your calm, your hands, they make you more than just a woman. They make you something men can't understand. And what they can't understand, they fear. And what they fear, they burn. To most people in the village, a leaf is just a leaf. A root is something you dig up so the chickens don't trip. But to you, they're life, salvation, maybe even the thin thread that keeps death at bay during a difficult birth. You know the power of yarrow, how it stops bleeding when the baby's out, but the blood won't stop flowing. You've seen how mugwort can ease a turned stomach, or how wild chamomile settles a mother's shaking hands. But you've also learned the cost of that knowledge, because in the Middle Ages, every remedy you carry is also an accusation waiting to happen. You don't study from books. Books are for men in robes who write Latin spells they don't believe in and look down on the women who practice real healing. Your knowledge comes from memory, your mother's voice, your grandmother's hands, trial and error in the dirt behind the cottage. You don't have formal names for what you do. You have instincts, observations, patterns of moonlight and timing, and what smells right when a woman's skin turns cold. You keep notes in your head and sometimes on scraps of bark or cloth, because writing them down on paper risks having them found. And if someone reads the wrong word the wrong way, it's not medicine anymore. It's a curse. Some of the herbs you use are gentle, others less so. Pennyroyal, if brewed too strong, can stop a womb from ever bearing again. But if a woman comes to you weeping, desperate, asking for help to delay another mouth she can't feed, what do? Tell her no? Send her to the priest who'd rather see her dead than childless? Or do you reach into your satchel, measure carefully, and pray you've chosen the right amount? There's no perfect choice, only choices that hurt less than others. You dry the herbs behind your cottage, mixing them at night by candlelight. You steep them into teas, mash them into poultices, Grind them with stone and bone until they smell sharp and clean. You don't label the jars, too risky. You know them by touch, by scent, by the way your fingers tingle when you hold certain roots too long. Some villagers come to you for more than childbirth, for coughs, for broken bones, for burns, but they never thank you in the daylight. They wait until nightfall when no one can see them knock on your door. And when something goes wrong, when a fever doesn't break or a child doesn't recover, they never admit they came to you. Instead, they remember that your tea tasted strange, that the leaves you used were too bitter, that your fingers smelled of smoke and moss. Suddenly, what healed becomes what harmed, and you become the danger they need to explain the pain they can't understand. Still, you keep gathering. You tuck dried flowers into satchels. You murmur old phrases as you tie stems together, because for every child who lives, for every mother who breathes because of your bitter brew, you remember why you started. Not to wield power, not to frighten, but to help, to give women something they rarely get in this world: care, attention, and a chance. In a village where the church bell is the loudest sound and the market stall is the center of social life, gossip is currency, and your name is always in circulation, not spoken loudly, not yet, but whispered, hissed, tossed into the space between two women drawing water, or exchanged in fragments over loaves of hard bread. She helped Marta last spring. Didn't that baby come out with a mark on its face? I heard she doesn't kneel during the whole Mass. It doesn't take much. One comment, a sideways glance, the wrong person walking past your door at the wrong time. And suddenly, you're not a healer. You're a story. They say you were born with a call, that you speak to animals, that your eyes glow in the dark. You laugh when you hear it, but not out loud. You can't afford to, because gossip isn't just talk here. It's survival, or the opposite. A good rumor spreads faster than plague and sticks harder than blood. And once people start telling each other that you know too much or never age, you know what comes next. Accusations aren't shouted. They're built, layer by layer, suspicion by suspicion, until one bad night tips the whole thing over. The women talk the most. They're the ones who come to you in secret but speak against you in public. Not because they want to, but because they have to. Protecting their reputations sometimes means sacrificing yours. You've watched women you saved cross the street to avoid you. Watched mothers you comforted call you dangerous. Watched wives you advised cling tighter to their husbands when you walk by. And all you can do is nod, because you understand. They're afraid, not of you, but of being next. Gossip doesn't need truth. It feeds on fear. When a child falls sick, when a cow stops giving milk, when a man loses his temper, someone always needs to be blamed. And who better than the midwife? The woman with the herbs. The one who delivers babies and sometimes buries them. The one who knows how to mix things no one else understands. And worse, the one who doesn't flinch at blood, who doesn't cry at death, who keeps secrets. You try to keep to yourself. You attend church. You smile when spoken to. But it doesn't stop the looks. It doesn't stop the little children from being pulled away by their mothers when you walk too close. It doesn't stop the way even the baker shortens his greetings. You become an outsider in your own home. The only time you're truly welcome is when someone's bleeding, crying, or screaming. Then they come running. And when the crisis passes, so does the courtesy. It wears on you. The loneliness, the half-truths, the knowledge that no matter how many lives you save, the village will never trust you fully. They need you, but they don't want you. And if they ever stop needing you, well, you've seen what happens to women who outlive their usefulness in places like this. You never owned one. That's the first thing you'll say if they ever come asking. If the priest shows up with soldiers, or if a neighbor lets her mouth run too freely, or if someone finds a single scrap of parchment tucked under a floorboard. "I've never read a thing," you'll insist. "Can't even spell my own name." And maybe that'll save you. Maybe not. Because a midwife who reads is a threat, and a woman who owns a book, that's almost a confession. Books in the Middle Ages are not for people like you. They are chained in monasteries, guarded in castle libraries, written in Latin by men who believe knowledge belongs to God and to themselves. Women are meant to listen, not learn, meant to obey, not interpret, and certainly not to read anything about the body, especially when they have the audacity to use that knowledge with their own hands. But of course you've read. Not openly, not proudly, but hungrily. You've glimpsed pages passed from one woman to another in secret, copied notes from fading scrolls, run your fingers over diagrams of the womb drawn by candlelight, sometimes backward, sometimes wrong, but better than nothing. You read not because you want power, but because you don't want someone else's ignorance to kill another mother. The forbidden texts aren't magic spells or curses. They're practical. They list herbs for pain, ways to turn a breech baby, how to check for fevers or clean a wound. Simple knowledge, but dangerous in the wrong hands, or rather in yours. Because when you possess that kind of learning, it's not seen as wisdom. It's seen as defiance. It undermines the priest's authority, the Lord's law, the doctor's pride. You're not supposed to know these things. You're supposed to bow when men speak. You're supposed to take what they give you, even if it's wrong, even if it kills someone. So you hide your learning. You memorize instead of writing. You burn notes after using them. You whisper knowledge into the ears of girls who watch you work, hoping they'll remember the right flower or the safest route. Sometimes you write anyway, because you have to. Because memory isn't always enough. You write in code, using symbols only you understand. Stars for fever, feathers for breath, rivers for blood. It feels like a sin, but it also feels like survival. And then there are the books written by women, rare, priceless, hidden in corners of Europe, passed in silence. You've never seen one, but you've heard the stories. Of a midwife in Salerno who wrote a manual on childbirth, of a nun who kept records of healing and herbs in the margins of psalms. They were punished, of course. Shamed, forgotten, their work dismissed or claimed by men. But their words linger, like footprints just below the surface of the mud. Sometimes you wonder if it's worth it. The risk, the danger, the isolation, but then you remember the night you turned a baby in the womb because of something you read. You remember the mother who lived, the child who breathed, and you tuck the parchment deeper into your apron and go on. You've never dissected a body. No one lets women near corpses unless they're burying them. But somehow, through years of watching, feeling, guessing, and remembering, you've built a map of the female form more accurate than anything a university could print. Not because you were taught, but because you had to learn. And you learned in the only way available, with your hands, by candlelight, in the dark. When a woman cries out in labor, when her muscles seize and her pulse skitters, you feel every shift. You feel the tightening and loosening of her womb, like a storm passing through her skin. You know when the child is too high, too turned, too still. You know where to press, when to lift, how to move. You feel the ridge of the pelvis under your fingers, the slippery crown of a baby sliding free, the awful silence when there's no movement at all. There are no diagrams for what you know, only memories. the feel of torn flesh and hot blood, the way a mother's stomach sags when the womb empties, the small, quick tremble of a baby still unsure it belongs to this world. You've felt rib cages collapse. You've held hearts that stopped too soon. You've stitched wounds in silence, whispering encouragement to women who can't hear you anymore. And yet, for all your knowledge, the men in the cities think you're guessing. The surgeons in their robes and gloves speak of humors and balance, while you press your hands against the belly of a dying woman and know that she needs more than theory. They say your work is unclean, that your hands are impure, that your touch desecrates. But when their wives are in labor, when the bleeding won't stop, when the baby won't turn, they send for you. Not their students, not their books, you. There's something sacred in what you do, something unspeakable, and that's the danger. Because no matter how skilled you are, no matter how many lives you've saved, you're always one bad birth away from being a cautionary tale. One mother who dies in your arms, and suddenly you're not a healer. You're a butcher, a sinner, a woman who dares to touch things only God and his priests are supposed to know. Still, you keep learning. You watch, you listen, you remember. And at night, you light a single candle, sit with your tools, and sketch what you can on scraps of bark or bone. Because if you don't record it, who will? If you don't pass it on, who will learn? The priest won't teach it. The doctor won't admit it. The books won't write themselves. And somewhere, perhaps years from now, another woman will sit in the dark, hold your notes in her hands, and understand. She'll place her fingers where yours once were, press into a laboring belly, and say the words you never dared to write down, and the work will go on. Privacy is a myth, a luxury reserved for queens and widows with enough coin to buy silence. For everyone else, childbirth is a spectacle, loud, messy, and rarely confined to the woman actually giving birth. When the first contractions hit, it's not just the midwife who comes running. It's the mother-in-law, the neighbor, the woman who once gave birth to twins, the cousin who has opinions about everything. The house fills with voices, footsteps, prayers, and nerves. The air gets thick with boiled water and tension. Every face in the room becomes part of the performance. And you're stuck in the middle, directing a drama where one misstep can turn triumph into tragedy. Sometimes the birth room overflows. Children are shooed to corners, ears covered in vain. Men hover by the door, pretending not to listen but wincing at every scream. Some women cry along with the laboring mother. Others just mutter advice you never asked for. They comment on how she's breathing, whether she's pushing too soon, what color her face is. They offer remedies, some helpful, some dangerous. One suggests tying garlic to her ankle. Another insists that iron placed under the bed will keep the devil out. You don't argue. Not now. There's no time. You try to keep focus. Your hands work with practiced rhythm, your mind tuning out the chaos. But it's not easy. There's always someone watching too closely. Someone leaning in a little too far, noting every grimace on your face, every decision you make. And if something goes wrong, you can feel the weight of those eyes shift. The whispering starts before the last push. You've been in rooms where the baby hadn't yet drawn breath, and already the blame was thick in the air. It doesn't matter that you've delivered 5 others that week. In this moment, you are only as good as this one. Sometimes the mothers themselves don't want you there. Maybe they were told you used the old words. Maybe they heard you're unlucky. Maybe they just want their aunt or sister to do it instead. But when the labor turns and the blood comes, when the baby stalls and the pain sharpens, they call for you anyway, because they know, deep down, that you're the only one who knows what to do. That performance shifts then, from gossip to dependence, and you step in without a word, like the understudy no one wanted but everyone needs. And yet, even in the middle of agony, there's spectacle. Some women cry for saints, others curse their husbands, promising vengeance between contractions. You've seen women declare this their last child, only to call for you again 9 months later. You've seen them beg for death, then kiss their newborns like salvation. And through it all, you stay quiet, efficient, unflinching, because this is not your moment. You're just the one holding it together. But the performance doesn't end with the birth. After the baby is delivered, the real judging begins. How fast did you clean up the blood? Did you wrap the cord too tight? Was the baby marked? Did the mother faint too long? Everyone becomes a critic. Everyone suddenly knows what should have been done differently. And if you speak up, if you defend your choices, your timing, your hands, you become a spectacle yourself. Arrogant, suspicious, dangerous. So you stay silent. You bow your head. You wash your hands in scalding water and leave before the baby's first nap. You let them celebrate while you walk home with blood still drying under your nails, knowing they'll forget what you did by morning, but not what they think you might have done. You never signed anything. There was no ceremony, no parchment, no seal, but you took the oath anyway. Every midwife does, whether she realizes it or not. It begins the first time you lay your hands on a laboring belly, feel the life kicking beneath, and know that what happens next depends on you. That silent vow to do everything you can, even when it isn't enough, even when it costs you everything, that's the oath. And it binds you more tightly than any priest's blessing ever could. You don't just promise to help deliver babies. You swear to guard secrets, to hold pain, to carry stories no one else wants to hear. You swear to act without hesitation when others are frozen in fear. To use the knowledge passed to you, herbs, hands, prayers, and all, to protect the woman before you, even if it means stepping into danger yourself. Sometimes that means hiding things, blood-streaked cloth, a miscarriage before it's whispered. Sometimes it means standing between a woman and her own family, reminding them gently, or not so gently, that this is her body, her pain, her moment. But the oath doesn't just protect the mothers. It protects you. In a world that gives women no power, being a midwife means having one thing no one else can claim: authority in the birthing room. You know what to do when the cord is wrapped, when the pulse fades, when the child won't breathe. And that knowledge becomes its own kind of sanctuary. Even when they call you witch, even when they spit at your feet, they still call for you when the time comes, because they know, and you know they know. And yet the oath is heavy. It doesn't stop with birth. You carry the aftermath, too. The pain, the loss, the ones you couldn't save. You bury it in silence. You weep where no one can hear you. Because you swore not to falter, not to break, not to let them see the cost. And so you carry your burden alone, through empty streets and moonlit paths, always walking back toward the next cry, the next mother, the next risk. Some days you wonder if it's worth it, if the oath means anything to anyone but you. When the village turns cold, when the priest watches too closely, when your hands ache from years of grasping life and letting it go, But then you hear your name whispered with hope instead of suspicion. You see a child you delivered take her first steps. You watch a mother who almost died laugh in the sunlight. And you remember why you took the oath, why you'll take it again, and again, and again. For every woman who has no one else, for every life born on the edge of death, for every scream that ends in a heartbeat. Time becomes your enemy the moment the baby arrives and doesn't cry. In a world governed by divine judgment and church law, you're not just racing to save a life, you're racing to save a soul. Because if that baby dies before baptism, it doesn't go to heaven. It doesn't even get limbo anymore. It is cast out, unblessed, unsaved. And in the eyes of the church, that child's eternal fate is sealed within minutes of birth. That pressure doesn't fall on the priest. He's not here. It falls on you. You've trained your ears to know the difference between a quiet baby and a dying one. You can feel the weight of silence, like a boulder pressing down on the room. And in that moment, as the others look on, panicked, whispering, praying, you know what you have to do. You speak the words yourself. They're not official. You're not ordained, but you know them. You've heard them enough. You mutter the formula under your breath as your hands rub warmth into that tiny back, as you will breathe into lungs that have never worked before. In nomine Patris, and hope to God that someone higher up is listening. There's no water, not always, so you use what you have. Wine, if it's nearby, a few drops from a boiled rag. Once, in desperation, your own tears. The rules say only priests can baptize, but the village bends the rules when it suits them, when death is closer than salvation. You've baptized babies who never opened their eyes. You've seen mothers sob with relief, not because the child lived, but because the soul was saved. And yet, sometimes even that's not enough. When the priest comes days later and hears what you did, he might nod, or he might frown. He might say the words need to be repeated, just in case. He might question your Latin. He might ask whether you had the right intent, as if intent matters when the baby is blue and still, and if you hadn't done it. If you'd waited out of fear or deference, then the blame would be worse. You let the child die unbaptized. You condemned it. You, not the mother, not the priest, you. There's no winning this. You act because you must, because mothers beg you with their eyes, because the other women in the room step back, not wanting the responsibility. Because in that instant, you are not just a midwife. You are priest and physician and hope and dread. You carry the weight of the soul in your hands, and you pray that when the time comes, someone else will do the same for you. Sometimes the child lives. It cries eventually. A gurgle, a gasp, a sputtering yelp, and the room breathes again. Other times, it stays still, and the silence is so loud it hums. You wrap the body gently. You mark the spot of baptism with a scrap of thread, and you hand it to the mother with words that are supposed to comfort but never do. The church speaks of mercy, but they rarely attend the births. They don't sit in the heat of panic, trying to decide which comes first, saving a body or saving a soul. You do, and you always choose both, even when there's not enough time. Sometimes you arrive too late to save the mother. You see it in her eyes before she says a word, if she can speak at all. Pale, shivering, lips cracked from days without water, breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. Her body is already breaking. Her pulse is weak, her skin clammy, her belly swollen with a child who hasn't yet met the world. The others in the room are silent, hoping for a miracle, but bracing for what they've already accepted. And then all eyes turn to you. There's no glory in a deathbed delivery. No cheers, no warm cloth waiting, just a ticking clock. You kneel at her side, take her hand, and listen. She might whisper a name. She might ask you to save the baby. She might beg you not to let her suffer. You nod, even if you can't promise anything, because in that moment, she needs hope more than honesty. You try to get her to push, but she's too weak. You try to shift the baby. Too late. The womb fights back. Time is running out. You reach into her body with hands that tremble despite years of practice. You pray without words. You use every trick you know, every herb, every whispered phrase you can't even remember learning. Sometimes, against all odds, the child slips free. And in that moment, just for a breath, you think maybe this one will be different. But then she goes still. You hold the baby as she dies. You call for cloth. You press down on her belly to slow the bleeding even as the light drains from her face. The women behind you are already sobbing. Someone leaves to fetch the priest. The baby cries, but no one smiles. Not yet. Maybe not ever. You clean her quietly. You close her eyes. You place the baby in the arms of her sister or her mother or her husband, and you step back, because you were there at the end, and you were the one who asked her to push one last time. No matter how much they thank you or don't, that moment stays with you. It becomes a weight in your chest, a shadow behind your eyes. And the next time you're called to a birth, that shadow walks with you. You don't always get a choice. Sometimes you deliver the baby after she's already gone. Sometimes the womb keeps working, even as the heart stops. And then your hands move on instinct, separating death from life with a kind of grim reverence that feels more like a funeral rite than a miracle. You don't talk about it. No one does. But every midwife carries those births with her, hidden under the stories of joy, buried beneath the praise. And sometimes, late at night, you remember the feel of her skin growing cold, the silence that fell after the last breath, the look in her eyes when she knew the end was near, and still told you to keep going. That kind of courage, that kind of trust, is what breaks you the most as so. The baby doesn't care that the village is dying. The womb doesn't stop contracting just because the rats are multiplying and the priest is too afraid to leave the rectory. A woman goes into labor whether the streets are quiet or filled with screams, whether the death cart has passed once today or 5 times. And so you are summoned, because birth refuses to wait, even for the plague. You arrive wearing the only protection you have, a wool shawl soaked in vinegar, a sprig of rosemary tucked under your kerchief, and your faith in the fact that you've survived this long. You've been told not to go. Everyone has, but no one else will come. And you can't say no, even now, even when your hands shake as you knock on the door. Inside, the air is heavy with more than pain. The smell hits first, sweat, rot, the sour tang of panic, and underneath it the unmistakable stench of the sickness. You see it on the mother's face. She's flushed too bright. Her breath comes in rattles. Black boils have begun to flower beneath her jaw, but still, she labors. Because the plague doesn't kill before the child arrives. It waits. You wash your hands in wine. There's no soap, no water, no one else to help. The others have fled or died. The father is gone, buried or hiding, no one will say. The only ones left are you, the mother, and the child who hasn't yet drawn a breath. You bite back the bile in your throat and get to work. Every touch feels like a risk. Every cry from the mother is echoed by the groan of death from another room. You press your hands to her belly, whisper old prayers, and pray your own lungs don't betray you. When the baby comes, it's fast, violent. There's too much blood, too little breath. You cut the cord with shaking fingers, swaddle the baby in cloth that still smells of herbs, and hand it to the mother, who barely reacts. She's already slipping. You see it in her eyes, the way her fingers twitch, the way she turns her head as if hearing something from far away. You try to feed her water, but she coughs it out in a spray of red and black. There's no time to clean, no time to prepare. You wrap the baby tightly and lay her gently in a basket by the hearth. Then you do what no one else will. You stay. You stay long after the child sleeps. You stay when the mother stops moving. You close her eyes with hands that now feel feverish. You press the mark of the cross on her forehead and murmur a blessing you half remember. You stay until the light fades and the rats come scratching. Then you leave. You burn your clothes. You scrub your skin raw. You lie awake at night, heart pounding, throat tight, waiting for the first cough, the first ache, the first sign that the plague has come for you too. And when it doesn't, when morning comes and you can still stand, you go to the next birth, because someone has to. You don't fear death like you used to. You've seen it in too many forms. But the plague is different. It doesn't argue. It doesn't explain. It just takes. And still, in its shadow, you bring life into the world. You hold newborns with blood-streaked hands and fever in your bones, and no one thanks you. They're too afraid to speak your name. Some births aren't meant to be spoken of. Some children arrive too soon, too small, or too silent. And when they do, the world turns its back. The family looks to you, not for comfort, not for prayer, but for action, for silence, for discretion. Because in a village where every cry is heard and every secret spreads faster than the flu, a stillbirth isn't just a tragedy. It's a scandal, a question no one wants answered. And so, you do what's expected. You bury the evidence. You wrap the baby in linen, soft as you can, even when your hands are shaking. You press herbs into the cloth, not for magic, not even for scent, but for ritual. A farewell no one will witness. Sometimes the mother is awake, eyes empty. Sometimes she asks to hold the child once. Sometimes she doesn't. And you don't insist. You just nod, cover the tiny form, and move quietly through the back door. There's a place behind your cottage. You've used it before. Not often, but enough. A hollow under the old ash tree where no one walks. You dig with bare hands or a spade you keep hidden beneath kindling. You say nothing, no words, no rites, only breath and dirt, and the terrible unbearable weight of silence. You mark the grave with nothing, no stone, no token. The child disappears as though it never was. Because that's what the family needs, to forget, to protect their name, their marriage, their standing in the eyes of God and neighbors alike. A child born out of wedlock, or too soon after a wedding, a baby with a strange mark, or one that looked too much like someone it shouldn't. These aren't just whispers, they're sentences. Exile, shame, worse. And so you protect them. You shoulder the sin, or what the village believes is sin. You take the burden they can't carry and bury it deep. You say nothing when the priest asks about a birth you were never called to. You lie softly when someone mentions a strange cry in the night. Because you must. Because no one else will. Because women are always the ones asked to bleed in silence. Sometimes you wonder what it would be like to live in a world that didn't treat these deaths like stains. A world where you could mark the grave, say the name, light a candle. But that world doesn't exist here. Here, you are cleaner for being forgetful, holier for being mute. And so you become the keeper of unmarked graves, the guardian of hidden grief. And when the mothers ask, days, weeks, sometimes years later, what happened to the baby, you take their hands, look into their eyes, and tell them it was peaceful. You don't lie, but you don't tell the whole truth either, because mercy, sometimes, is measured in what we choose not to say. In your work, you often carry the lives of women in your hands, but don't forget, those hands still belong to someone else. In medieval Europe, everything is owned. The land, the harvest, the bodies, especially the female ones. And you, the midwife, are only allowed to do what you do because men permit it. Lords, priests, husbands. You don't just help women bring life into the world. You ask for permission to do so. It's subtle at first. No one says the words outright. But you feel it every time a man lingers too long at the threshold, while his wife writhes in pain inside. He won't help, but he still believes his presence gives weight to the process. His silence is authority. His nod is consent. When he steps aside, it's not because he trusts you. It's because it suits him to let you work. And if the baby dies, he'll claim he never truly agreed to your methods. For noble households, it's even worse. You're called only when the priest is too busy or the appointed gentlewoman is sick. You're reminded in whispers and glances that you're not one of them. The birth may happen in your hands, but the legacy it produces belongs to him. The child is a name on a deed, a body destined for marriage contracts and land disputes. And if something goes wrong, you'd better have a noble scapegoat already in mind, because the Lord's word will outweigh yours no matter what you did. Sometimes the husband won't even let you in the room. He insists his mother assist, or a servant, or no one at all. He claims prayer will do more than your poultices, that you'll curse the child with your touch. Other times he demands you stay until the end, that you not leave until the baby cries and the mother walks again, like you're a hired hand in a field, not someone clinging to life by a thread in your own right. And then there are those who want you there only to ensure the child is male, as if you have any control over that, as if your herbs can stir the womb to their will. You know of midwives beaten, imprisoned, exiled, all for delivering bad news, for being the last to touch a dying heir, for not delivering a son. You know of one who was hanged because the Lord claimed her negligence caused the baby's twisted leg, even though the mother had fallen a week before. The truth never mattered. What mattered was ownership. The husband owns the wife. The Lord owns the household. The priest owns the soul. And you, the midwife, are just the tool they tolerate, until you make them uncomfortable. And still, you serve. You knock humbly on the doors of cottages and manors alike, your satchel in hand, your eyes lowered, not because you lack pride, but because you've learned how the game works. You smile when spoken to. You step back when ordered. You give thanks when dismissed. And then, when no one's watching, you save a life anyway. It's never a good sign when the room is full of men, not at a birth, not in this time. If they're present, it usually means something's gone wrong, very wrong. Maybe the bleeding started too soon. Maybe the screams were too sharp, the labor too long. Maybe someone panicked and fetched every man in the household. Or maybe they just don't trust you. Whatever the reason, once the men step into the birth chamber, the rules change. The air grows heavier. Their voices fill the space, loud and unnecessary. They ask questions no one has time to answer. They demand explanations they wouldn't understand. Why is she screaming? Shouldn't the baby be here by now? Why is there so much blood? And no matter how carefully you respond, no matter how calm your tone or confident your hands, they hear only what they want: fear. You try to keep working, but their presence crowds the room. One leans too close. Another questions your every move. Someone mutters about calling a real physician. You want to scream, not because you're afraid, but because you know they are. And frightened men are dangerous. They don't know what labor looks like. Not really. They haven't seen the hours of sweat, the tearing, the shaking, the silence between contractions that feels like a held breath. They think they're being brave by standing there, but all they're doing is interrupting, making the mother panic, making the room colder, louder, harder. Sometimes they take over completely. They insist the mother lie back even when her body says to squat. They demand you use no herbs, no touch, no whisper of the old ways. They cross themselves at every contraction, mutter prayers under their breath, like superstition is more sacred than experience. And if the birth goes wrong, if the baby comes out limp, if the mother faints or worse, they blame you every time. And the worst part, the mother, through her agony, sees it too. She watches as her pain is overshadowed by male panic. She sees your face go still, your hands slow. She sees that the power you held when it was just the two of you is slipping, being taken, replaced by authority, by hierarchy, by fear wearing boots and beards. When it's over, if the baby lives, if the mother breathes, you clean quietly. You answer the men's questions again, softer this time, while they congratulate each other for surviving the ordeal they barely understood. You pack your tools, wipe your hands, and slip out while they're still talking. You don't look back. Later, the mother may whisper her thanks when no one is listening, or she may not, because fear doesn't leave a woman untouched either. She saw how quickly her pain became a spectacle, how quickly her birth became theirs. And you? You walk home through the dark, your jaw clenched, your fists tight, thinking, next time I'll lock the door behind me. You press a paste of crushed comfrey and lavender to the torn skin, and the bleeding slows. You whisper a prayer over it, not to summon spirits, but to soothe a woman who's shaking so hard she can't form words. You know what to use, how much, when to stop. But to those who watch, it's not healing, it's suspicion. Because when a woman bleeds and you make it stop, they call it unnatural. When she should have died, but doesn't, they look to you like you've cheated fate. There's no clear line between healing and hexing in the medieval mind. Your herbs are too green, your hands too steady, your presence too calm. You speak when others weep. You work while others pray. And that makes people nervous. You've rubbed salves into split skin and been accused of placing a curse. You've brewed tea to slow fever and been warned that you're inviting devils into the home. You try to explain, but explanations are dry wood in the fire of fear. They never last. They ask what's in your jars. You tell them. Yarrow, pennyroyal, mugwort, ash bark. They nod like they understand, then whisper later that ash is a tree of the dead, and mugwort calls to demons. You hear them, the mutterings behind your back, the sideways glances when the wounds heal too quickly. No one accuses you directly, at least not yet, but the distrust sits in every silence. And then comes the moment it tips. A child is born with a mark A mother speaks nonsense after waking from fever. A baby dies, and someone says they saw you rub oil on its feet the night before. They forget the hundreds you helped. They remember only the one you couldn't save. And they ask, was it medicine or something else? It doesn't matter that you never spoke a curse, that your hands have done nothing but deliver, clean, comfort. To them, the mystery is the danger. If they can't explain it, they blame it. And your knowledge, your training, your intuition, those aren't virtues. Those are questions they can't answer. So they answer them with fear. And what do? You keep helping. You keep working. You still kneel by firesides and bedsides, wrap wounds, cradle newborns. Because the line between healer and witch exists only in their minds. You know better. You know that healing is slow, messy, imperfect. But they want miracles or explanations. And when they get neither, they call it sorcery. So you step carefully. You use fewer herbs in front of witnesses. You pray louder, even when your voice trembles. You let them believe the healing came from the saint's relic, not your poultice. Because if they see the truth too clearly, they'll fear it. And if they fear it too much, you know how that ends. You're not just the one who catches babies. You're the one who witnesses the moment a soul enters the world. And with that role comes something else, judgment. Because in medieval Europe, the midwife is more than a healer. She's also a kind of quiet confessor, a moral gatekeeper in the hours when heaven and earth hold their breath. You know the difference between a birth that comes on time and one that comes suspiciously early. You know when a woman flinches too hard at the sound of her husband's name. You know when the father standing beside you looks nothing like the child he's claimed. You keep these things to yourself, mostly. But there are times when you're called to speak, when the church asks for your testimony, when the Lord's steward needs to know if the child is legitimate, when a woman dies and someone wants to know if she confessed before her final breath. You didn't ask for this role. You didn't train to become a moral authority. But there's no one else. You're the first to touch the child, the last to hear the mother's words. And in a world where female virtue is more valuable than female health, that makes you dangerous. Sometimes they bring you to court, not on trial, but as a witness. They ask if the child was born head first, if it cried, if it was malformed, if the mother's words were sinful or penitent. Your answers carry weight. The wrong one could condemn a soul or save one. The right one could protect a family's name or destroy it. And sometimes the woman looks at you with pleading eyes during labor. She knows what's coming. She begs you not to tell what she confessed between screams, and you don't. You protect her, because the truth is messy, and the judgment of men is quick, and the fire they burn witches with isn't just for curses, it's for women who know too much and say it too loud. You've been asked to confirm virginity, to swear a woman was chaste before marriage. You hate those moments. You hate how they strip away dignity and turn you into a tool of control. But you say what you must, carefully, because honesty is dangerous, and silence is power. You've learned that words, your words, can change lives, or end them. And so you become something more than a midwife. You become a judge of secrets, a bearer of truth wrapped in discretion. You carry stories no one else hears and make decisions no one else sees, and it wears on you quietly, like a stone in your apron pocket. A weight you never asked to carry. But you do, because if not you, then who? The priest who has never touched a mother's hand? The Lord who sees birth as a transaction? You hold the line between life and death, between truth and survival, between justice and mercy. The moment the child is born, eyes turn, not to you, not even to the mother, but to the baby's skin. The villagers lean in, searching for signs. A patch of red on the neck, a devil's kiss, a dark mole on the back, the mark of a witch, an extra finger, a punishment, a missing toe, a curse. In this world, every blemish tells a story, and none of them are innocent. And you, the midwife, are always tangled in the tale. You've delivered babies with cleft lips, fused limbs, skin like ash. You've seen them live and you've seen them die. But what stays with you is never the medical truth. It's the reaction. The way the room stills when something is off. The way someone gasps or crosses themselves or mumbles a prayer just loud enough to be heard. You can feel it shift, like the weight of the air changing. A birthmark becomes an omen. A malformed ear becomes a prophecy. And suddenly the joy of birth curdles into dread. You try to explain. You say it's natural. You say you've seen it before. But they don't care what you've seen. They care what they believe. That baby was marked for something, for evil, for misfortune, for something they can't name but want to avoid. And then the questions start. What did the mother eat? Who touched her belly? Did you say the protection prayer before labor? Did you use the right herbs? And all of it leads back to you. You've seen mothers refuse to nurse their own children. You've seen fathers demand the baby be taken away. You've stood in silence while someone suggested drowning, quietly, mercifully, before it grows up and causes harm. You've had to speak carefully, threading the line between defiance and diplomacy to save a life that's only minutes old. And what if the mother doesn't survive? Then it's even easier to blame the child, and you. She died because the baby was cursed. The midwife didn't say the blessing. The birthmark means it came from sin. The same voices that once called you wise now call you wicked. The same hands that helped you carry water now clutch crosses tighter when you walk by. It doesn't matter if the child grows strong. The mark stays. A reminder. A whisper in every conversation. Some will say it's nothing, that the child was lucky to live. Others will never let it go. And as for you walk away from that birth knowing you did everything right, but that no one will remember it that way. They'll remember the spot, the mark, the silence. You've started wearing a charm around your neck when you deliver now. Not for power, not for protection, but for show. Let them see you pray. Let them hear you bless the child. Let them believe you warded off the spirits, because if they don't, the next mark won't be on the child. It'll be on you. You know the signs before anyone else, the strange rhythm of contractions. The mother's voice pitched too high, the pain arriving too soon, too sharp. You press your hands to her belly and feel the resistance. The baby is turned. Feet down, head up. A breech birth. A dangerous position in any time, but especially now, in a world where you're expected to fix what even nature won't. There are no tools, no forceps, no hospital, just you, your hands, and a mother already gasping with fear. You've done this before. You know how to coax, how to shift, how to brace yourself and pray. But there's something else in the room now. Panic. Not just from the mother, but from the others watching. Because a child born the wrong way isn't just a medical risk. It's a bad omen, a sign. And the moment you speak the word breach, the tension sharpens like a knife. The room fills with movement. Someone runs to fetch the priest. Someone else mutters that this happened to a cow last year, and the calf died, and so did the woman. The mother starts to cry, not from the pain, but because she's already hearing the judgment. She's broken, she's cursed, and you're the one who has to undo it. You roll up your sleeves and work in silence. There's no time for anything else. You talk to the baby like it can hear you. You press and turn and adjust, slowly, carefully, through screams and blood and the rising scent of terror. Sometimes you succeed. The baby shifts, slides free, gasps in the air like it just won its first battle. The mother collapses into sobs. The room exhales. But sometimes it doesn't work. And then you have choices to make that no one ever speaks of. Choices that will haunt you. Pull harder and risk snapping the child's fragile neck. Wait too long and risk the mother's life. In those moments, the air becomes too thin. The pressure in the room is a living thing. You feel it crawl up your spine. You make the call, and you live with it forever. And no matter the outcome, the judgment comes next. If the child lives but the mother doesn't, they say it's because the child was unnatural. If the mother lives and the child is deformed, they say you twisted it wrong. If both die, it's your fault. You handled it, you touched it, you interfered. Some even say you caused it, that you allowed the baby to turn, that you willed it so. There are laws now, written by men far away, that say midwives who handle breech births without permission risk punishment. That if a noble heir dies in a turned birth, it must be investigated. That a priest must be present if things go wrong. You've heard of women fined, banished, even burned, for how a breech child entered the world, as if you control the way life chooses to arrive, and yet you keep doing it. Because when a mother grabs your wrist and begs you not to let her die, you don't think of laws. You think of her. You think of the child still inside her, struggling to find its way out. You think of the silence that will fall if you don't act. And so, once again, you do what only you can. They say midwives are guardians of life, but the church has always watched you as if you're guarding a secret, as if your knowledge were a flame, useful for light, but always one gust away from burning the village down. You operate in a space the church doesn't control, and that alone makes you dangerous. Birth happens in blood and bone, in the cries of women and the hands of other women. There's no altar, no incense, no sacred vestments, just you, kneeling beside a straw mattress while God decides whether someone lives or dies. And that unsettles them, which is why they keep you close. They give you licenses to practice, papers written in Latin that you can't read, issued by bishops who've never seen a birth. These licenses are supposed to ensure purity. What they really ensure is control. You must swear not to use charms, not to speak certain prayers, not to administer sacraments. You must swear to report sin when you see it, to confess the confessions whispered in labor. You must swear your loyalty to God, as interpreted by men who would rather you didn't exist. Sometimes they test you. They send priests unannounced to ask about the last birth you attended. They ask who the father was. They ask if the baby cried. They ask if you baptized it, and if you used the correct words, the right water, the approved gesture. If your answers are too slow or too fast, you're summoned again. You've seen midwives who answered wrong. They disappeared or reappeared later with their homes burned. The church never needed proof, just doubt. You try to play along. You say the right things. You cross yourself in the proper way. You keep your herbal knowledge quiet. You pray aloud while you work, even when your mind is screaming in silence. But the truth is, your loyalty isn't to the church. It's to the mother in front of you, whose eyes are wide with terror, whose body is breaking, whose soul has nothing to do with sin and everything to do with survival. And that truth is dangerous. The Church says life begins with breath and ends with judgment. You say life begins when the mother reaches for your hand and ends when she doesn't let go. The Church says suffering is holy. You say suffering is a thing to be soothed. The Church wants power over birth because they can't stand that it happens without them, that it happens in kitchens and barns and back rooms, guided by women who never asked permission. And so you're watched. You feel their eyes in every quiet moment, in every whispered rumor, in every glance from the pulpit when the sermon turns to purity and obedience. You've delivered the priest's niece, the bishop's daughter. You've cleaned their blood off your hands, and still they distrust you, because you were there when the soul arrived, and they weren't, and they never will be. It happens eventually. No matter how skilled you are, no matter how many lives you save, there will come a day when you fail. And when you do, the consequences are never just sorrow. In your world, failure comes with a price. You remember the birth, you always will. The mother's screams sharper than most, the baby's silence deeper than it should have been. You tried everything. You turned, you pressed, you whispered, you begged, but the blood kept coming. The breath never came. And when it was over, the room was too quiet and too crowded. It wasn't your fault. You know that. But knowing and proving are two very different things. The whispers began before you'd even packed your tools. They said you hesitated, that your herbs smelled strange, that you didn't pray hard enough. They said the mother's eyes looked wrong before the end, that she was marked, that you didn't recognize the signs, or that you did and hid them. You don't sleep that night, not from guilt, but from dread. The next day, a messenger comes. The steward wants to speak. The Church has questions. The family is concerned. The words are polite, but the meaning is clear. Explain yourself. You arrive humble, head bowed, voice steady. You recount the birth step by step, heart pounding as you leave out nothing but the truth that would damn you. You say you used common herbs, that the prayer was spoken, that the child did not breathe no matter what you did. You do not say that the mother screamed your name as she bled. You do not say that you held the baby too long after knowing it was gone. You do not say that part of you broke when it did. The verdict comes quietly. You're not jailed, not fined, but you're watched. You're told not to attend noble births for a while. You notice the visits stop. The knocks at your door grow fewer. The mothers find someone else, less skilled, less experienced, but safer. Safer because she hasn't failed. Yet. Some women never recover. One mistake is all it takes. One death. One accusation. One wrong word. You've seen it. Midwives whose homes are pelted with stones. Who flee to other villages with nothing but their tools and shame. Who disappear into forests and are never heard from again. They were once like you, respected, trusted, until they weren't. And even if you stay, even if you're forgiven, you carry the price. You question yourself. Your hands tremble for the first time in years. You hesitate at the next birth, afraid the failure might return. And that hesitation, that's the real danger. Because it lingers. It infects your confidence. It makes you doubt your skill, your instinct, the very things that once kept women alive. You survive, but you're never the same. You keep working, you keep delivering. But now, Every time you hear a baby's silence stretch too long, your mind races. You remember that one night, that one child, that one name they stopped saying. Failure is not an end, it's a scar. And in your line of work, every scar speaks. You were never supposed to know how to do this. No woman was. Cutting into the body, especially the womb, was the domain of surgeons, priests, or butchers. Men. But when a mother dies mid-labor and the baby is still inside, alive or maybe alive, there's no time to fetch a surgeon from the next town, no time to pray, just a chance. A terrible, slim, fading chance. And so, sometimes, a midwife cuts. They don't talk about it. Not in stories, not in records, certainly not in church scrolls. But the knowledge is there, passed in whispers, remembered from terrible nights when nothing else worked. You've heard of women who tried, who boiled knives in wine, who cut quick and clean, or not clean at all. Some saved the child, some didn't. Some were blamed, some vanished, some were burned. Because to open a woman's body is to open more than flesh. It's to trespass, to challenge God's design. And when a woman does it, that's heresy twice over. But you've seen the signs, the stillness of the mother, the labor that stops, not with relief, but with silence. The belly still round, still full, still moving, and you've felt the weight of the room. Everyone looking to you, not with hope, but desperation, because no one else will act. And so your hands move. You heat the blade, you pour wine over it, you make the cut low, fast, trying not to think of the coldness beneath your fingertips. The flesh parts, blood pours, your stomach turns. You reach in. The womb is deeper than you thought. It's hotter, slicker. You whisper the same prayer you always do, not for success, for forgiveness. If the child lives, there's no celebration, only shock. Only the eyes of the family, wide and haunted, as they take the baby from your arms like it's been plucked from hell itself. They don't speak, they don't thank you, because they don't understand what they've just seen. Only that you, a woman, opened another woman, that you reached into death and pulled out life. And if the child dies anyway, then you're the one who killed it. You touched the body, you interfered, you sinned. And if word spreads, and it often does, you'll be questioned, you'll be named, you'll be watched. Because cesarean is a word used only in books written by men. When you do it, it's not science. It's murder. You don't do it often. Only when there's no other choice. When the alternative is 2 deaths instead of 1. But the memory stays with you. The sound of the cut. The feel of the womb. The moment you pull a child from a woman who will never wake. And for the rest of your life, that moment will visit you in the dark, whispering, "You did what no one else dared, not out of cruelty, but because no one else would." You've learned to wait for it. That one sound that means you've succeeded, not just at your job, but at defending your life, your name, your place in this world. The cry, the first breath, pushed out in shock and fury by tiny lungs new to the air. It comes sharp, wet, loud, and when it does, the whole room changes. Fear dissolves, blame retreats. The risk you just took fades into triumph. Until that cry, you're walking a knife's edge. Every second the baby doesn't make a sound is another second people wonder if you've failed, if you've done something wrong, if you've summoned silence instead of life. Sometimes the baby comes out limp, blue, unmoving. You rub its back, clear the mouth, whisper the same old words you've said for years. You do it gently, then harder. You warm the limbs, shake the soles, kiss the forehead like it will wake the child up from whatever realm it wandered into on its way here. Everyone watches. The mother, if she's conscious, the father, if he's not too afraid, the family, holding their breath. And if nothing happens, you feel it, the shift, from hope to horror. The question behind their eyes, is it dead? Did she kill it? But then it comes, the cry, sometimes a shriek, sometimes a whimper, sometimes a rattling gasp. And suddenly, you're safe. No one thanks you, not out loud. But they relax. They turn to the child. The danger is over, for them. For you, the danger never ends, because you know it might not last. The cry doesn't mean the lungs will keep working, that infection won't come, that the child won't fade in the night. But in that moment, it's enough. You did what you were brought here to do. You ushered life into the room, and for a heartbeat, you're not a suspect. You're a savior. You wash the baby gently, swaddle it, whisper its name if one has been given. You hand it to the mother, or the grandmother, or the oldest sister, and then you step back. You let them marvel. You let them forget how close it all came to going wrong, how close you came to being blamed. That cry, small and wet and sharp, is your shield. It buys you more than safety. It buys you time. Time until the next birth. Time until the next silence. Time until the room is watching again, waiting for something to go wrong. You never stop listening for it. Even years later, walking past homes where you once delivered, you listen. And when you hear it, on the wind, in memory, it still makes your breath catch. That cry is everything. It's more than sound. It's survival. You walk into a room, and they notice what's not on your hand. No ring, no promise, no man standing behind you, arms crossed, nodding in silent approval. And in this world, that makes you vulnerable. An unmarried woman who knows too much, speaks too little, and works with blood and birth, that's not a healer, that's a threat. You've heard the whispers since your first delivery. Why hasn't she married? What does she do at night, alone in that cottage? She delivers other women's babies, but has none of her own. It never stops, because in the medieval village mind, a woman without a husband must be one of two things, pitiable or dangerous, and midwives never get pity. There were suitors once, farmers, widowers, old men with land and wine-stained teeth. You said no, because you knew the cost. A husband might protect your name, but he'd also claim your labor, your coin, your time. He'd follow you into birth rooms and pull you away at the worst moments. He'd demand children of his own and resent the ones you helped bring into the world. You chose your work, and that choice made you suspect. A married midwife might still be feared, but she's tolerated. You're free, and freedom is always threatening to those who rely on order, on control, on the idea that women must always be attached, accounted for, owned. Your independence isn't admired, it's questioned, picked apart like a wound that won't scab. And if something ever goes wrong, if a mother dies, if a child is marked, if a birth goes quiet, your status becomes ammunition. Of course it happened. She has no husband. Of course she failed. What does she know of motherhood? They say your womb is empty because your heart is cold, because your soul is unruly, because no man ever wanted to claim you. And if they're crueler, and some are, they say you've traded your chastity for darker powers. You've been followed, watched, had your door banged in the night by drunk men asking what you really do behind closed windows. You keep a knife now, not for birth, for everything else. You walk with your head high, but your ears tuned for footsteps. You smile when spoken to, but you never reveal too much, because they want to know you, but only to undo you. Still, you keep going. You show up to every birth. You help women who cross themselves as you enter. You deliver children whose fathers won't meet your eyes. And then you leave, quietly, walking home alone down paths where shadows whisper worse things than words. You never say it aloud, but you know, your solitude isn't weakness, it's armor. It's the one thing they can't take. And though it makes them uneasy, it also makes you strong. You've chosen your path, and you walk it steady, even if the whole village follows behind, waiting for you to trip. No one asks how you're feeling. They never have. You're the one who keeps your hands steady, your voice soft, your heart locked behind bone and resolve. But your body is no different from theirs, and over time it cracks. Your joints swell, your back burns. Your knees throb from hours crouched on dirt floors. Your fingers stiffen in winter, and sometimes you drop your tools without meaning to. But there's no rest, no healer for the healer. When you fall ill, you lie quietly in your own bed. No one rushes to your door. No one boils water or fetches herbs. Sometimes the village doesn't even notice. You dose yourself with the very things they fear, bitter brews, heated poultices, charms of your own making. You whisper words you wouldn't say aloud in another's home, words meant to calm the fever, not your soul. You talk to the spirits you don't believe in, just in case they're listening, because when your hands go still, who else will catch the next baby? You've buried your own wounds for years. The burn on your forearm from when a fire flared too hot during a winter birth. The infection from a tear in your palm that never quite healed. The limp in your step from slipping on a blood-soaked floor. These aren't badges, they're burdens, but you carry them because no one else can. Sometimes a woman will notice the way you wince, the way you sit too carefully, the way your breath stutters when you lift a heavy kettle. She'll ask, gently, if you're all right, and you'll lie. You'll say you're fine, because what would happen if you weren't? You think about teaching another, a girl, maybe the baker's niece, or the miller's second daughter. Someone who watches you too closely, who already knows the names of the herbs, who asks the right questions and doesn't flinch at blood. But then you stop yourself. You remember what it cost you, and you wonder if it's fair to pass on not just the knowledge, but the fear. You've tried to heal yourself. With rest, with tinctures, with silence. But some things don't mend. Not in this world. And so you live with the ache. You let it braid into your days, like a hidden scar along your spine. And when you're called again, and you always are, you pull on your cloak, grab your satchel, and walk back into the work. Because healing others is the only medicine that's ever truly worked on you. The sounds are always the same. Shallow breathing, the wet click of a tongue against a parched mouth, the rustle of straw as the body shifts for the last time. You sit beside her, the last living person she'll see, your hand pressed gently against hers, not to stop death, but to make sure she doesn't go into it alone. This isn't a moment of frantic healing. It's not a scene of saving. It's something else, something sacred and suffocating. You've been here before. Too many times, a labor that stretched too long, a fever that followed the birth, a wound that wouldn't close. Sometimes the woman knows she's dying. She tells you so, quietly, while her family waits in the next room, too afraid to come in. Other times, she fights it. Her eyes dart. Her fingers clutch at your wrist. Her mouth tries to form the names of her children, her husband, her God. And all the while, you stay, because no one else will. You wash her face with a rag soaked in lavender water. You wipe the blood from her thighs. You press cool cloths to her forehead. These aren't medical acts. They're gestures of grace. The work of a woman tending to another woman as she fades. It should be simple. It should be honored. But here, it's a quiet burden. One more thing the midwife does that no one ever sees. Sometimes she speaks. Confessions spill out. Secrets, regrets, prayers. You listen, not because you're a priest, but because she needs to be heard. Sometimes she asks you to forgive her. And you do, even if it's not yours to give, because what else is left? Sometimes she just asks you to stay until it's over, and so you do. You remember each one. You carry their final words like coins in your pocket. You think of them when you pass their homes, see their children, hear their names at Mass. No one else remembers the smell of the room, the feel of their hand going limp, the way the air changes when the last breath leaves the body. But you do. You always will. And when you leave, you walk home slowly. The world outside is too loud, too alive. You move through it like a ghost yourself, your skin still holding the warmth of someone else's final hour. You boil water, you scrub your hands, but the weight lingers, not just from grief, but from the knowing that one day you might die the same way, quiet in a dark room, with only another woman's hands to guide you out. The village quiets at dusk. Doors close. Fires are stoked. Dogs settle. But you stay alert, because that's when the screams begin. Not always human, not always childbirth, but you know the sound of labor when you hear it, raw, jagged, full of panic. It cuts through the wind and sets your heart pounding. Sometimes it's from a house you visited before. Sometimes it's a new voice, a new fear. But it always means one thing. They need you. You never sleep deeply. The screams live in your dreams even when no one is calling. You wake with a gasp, unsure whether it's real or memory. You light a candle. You wait for the knock. And when it comes, you're already up, already dressed, already bracing. You walk quickly through the darkness, guided only by instinct and lantern glow. Shadows bend the world into unfamiliar shapes. You think you see faces in windows. You know better than to look too long. The village fears the night for many reasons. Wolves, thieves, witches. But you walk through it anyway, because someone is screaming, and you are the only one who answers. Sometimes it's not a birth, it's a miscarriage. A woman too early in labor, too frightened to know what's happening. Or worse, it's already over. The child lost, the blood still fresh, and the screams are grief, not pain. You step into the room and become something more than a midwife. You become a mourner, a guardian, a witness to agony too big for words. Other times, it is a birth, but it's gone wrong. The baby stuck, the cord wrapped, the mother trembling in a pool of her own sweat and terror. You rush to her. You silence the others. You push fear aside and do the work you've always done. The screams keep coming, echoing off the stone and straw out into the cold. The village hears them and remembers them. And the next day they ask if it was you again, as if you caused the screams instead of silencing them. You know they talk. You know they wonder what kind of woman walks out into the dark so often. What kind of woman is always awake when others sleep? What kind of woman isn't afraid of screams, And the truth is, you are afraid, every time, but you go anyway, because someone has to. And when the screams finally stop, and the baby is born, or the mother sleeps, or the worst has passed, you walk home again. Your ears still ringing, your heart still hammering. You sleep, if you can. But the silence never lasts long. There's always another night. And always more screams. It always starts with a whisper. A child born with a cleft palate. A woman who dies in labor. A baby who never cries. The midwife was there, of course. She touched the mother. She muttered something. She used that strange powder again. At first, it's just talk. But talk in a village is like kindling near a fire. And when the wind shifts, when the crops fail or illness spreads, it takes only a spark to turn suspicion into accusation. And once they call you a witch, everything you've ever done becomes evidence. They come to your door not with gratitude, but with questions. Questions with no right answers. Have you used charms? Yes, for comfort. Have you spoken to spirits? Only the dying. Have you ever made a child cry without touching it? Of course, they cry when they're born. But your words twist in the air. The more you explain, the guiltier you sound. You've seen it happen before. Midwives led away in the name of justice. A woman dragged from her cottage, hands bound in rough rope, eyes wide but unblinking. You knew her. You shared herbs. You traded salves. You watched her walk into the courtroom and never come out. Her crime? A child died in her arms. That was all it took. The trials are not fair. They are theater, spectacle. Men in robes asking questions they already believe they know the answers to. Why were you at the birth alone? Why did the baby have a fever? Why did the mother say your name before she died? And the worst part is that even silence convicts you. Because if you don't defend yourself, you must be guilty. And if you do defend yourself, you're clearly too clever for a simple healer. They bring out witnesses, women you helped, women you comforted. And now they say they felt cold when you touched them, that their dreams changed after drinking your tea, that your eyes looked strange in the candlelight. You want to hate them, but you can't, because you understand. They're terrified, and a testimony might save their lives, even if it costs you yours. They search your home. They take your books, your herbs, your tools. They hold up your birthing chair, as if it's a throne of sin. They call your ointments witch's butter, your tea hex brew. You want to scream that you've saved lives, not taken them. But no one hears the screams of women once the word witch is spoken. And if you're lucky, if you're let go, but you never return to your life. Your name is stained, your work dries up. The mothers look away. Children are pulled closer when you pass. You're alive, yes, but only barely. Your voice is gone, your trust is gone, your practice is gone. But if you're not lucky, they don't ask questions anymore. They bind your wrists, they light the fire. They don't want your truth. They want your confession. And if you won't give it willingly, they'll take it from your body instead. It starts with questions asked too many times, too quickly. The same words, the same tone, the same eyes watching for weakness. Then come the threats. Then the pain. You know the tools. Not because you've seen them used, but because you've heard the stories. The thumb screws, the rack, the iron tongs, the branding rod. You know how a body bends and breaks. You've seen women in childbirth stretch beyond human limits, but this is different. This is damage without purpose, pain without birth. They strip away your dignity first, your clothes, your silence, your right to choose when to speak. Then they begin. Sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once. You are asked again, under the grinding weight of bone and scream, did you curse the child? Did you speak to demons? Did you make the mother bleed? And you say no, again and again. And then, when your mind is smoke, and your limbs are thunder, and the world has narrowed to pain, you say yes. You say anything. You name herbs you never touched. You admit to spells you never cast. You invent demons and midnights and pacts you've never imagined. Because it's the only way it ends. You are broken open like earth under a plow, and when they're done, they write down your words as gospel, a record of evil signed in agony. They hold it up like proof. They read it aloud in court. No one questions the bruises on your neck, the trembling of your voice, the hollowness behind your eyes, because now you've said it. And once you've said it, it is truth. Maybe they kill you. Maybe they don't. Maybe they let you live long enough to make others afraid. A warning dressed in skin and shame. Maybe they parade you through the streets. Maybe they put you back in your home and tell you to pretend everything is normal again. But nothing is. Your hands forget how to heal. Your eyes stop seeing clearly. You flinch when anyone raises their voice. You remember every crack of the whip, every moment they turned your flesh into confession. Not because you were guilty, but because you were exhausted. And still, someone will knock on your door one day. Quietly. A mother, desperate, begging. She knows what they said. She knows what they did. But she also knows you once saved her sister, or her cousin, or her mother. And she says the only thing that matters, I trust you. And somehow, you find the strength to open the door. Your hands know every plant by touch, your nose by scent. Rosemary for memory, chamomile for calm, sage to cleanse, lavender to soothe. But the same herbs that bring comfort also bring suspicion. In the eyes of your neighbors, a dried flower is never just a flower. It's either medicine or magic, and the line between them is razor thin. They watch you gather your herbs at dawn, basket in hand, cloak heavy with dew. They watch you dry bundles over your hearth, whispering prayers you learned from your grandmother, words of protection, not harm. They know you have knowledge older than the village itself, but they don't understand it, and what they don't understand, they fear. When you heal a feverish child with a tea brewed from elderflower, you're praised. When you ease a mother's pain with willow bark, you're respected. But let something go wrong. Let someone worsen despite your care, and the same elderflower tea becomes poison, the same willow bark a curse. They ask, why did she use that herb? Was it truly to heal, or was it something darker? They forget the mothers you've saved, the children who thrive, the wounds you've healed. They remember only your whispered words, your jars of strange-smelling oils, your quiet chants as you mix poultices under moonlight. Suddenly, healing becomes sorcery. Kindness becomes cunning. You are no longer a woman who helps. You're a witch who harms. You try to explain that herbs are just plants, that healing comes from the earth, not from demons. You try to show them how simple and pure it all is. But fear is stronger than reason. Soon they refuse your tea. They avoid your salves. They cross the street when you walk by. You feel the shift, the suspicion thickening around you like fog, impossible to clear. Then comes the day when the village priest knocks at your door, stern and silent. He asks about the herbs in your pantry. He asks what words you whispered into the fevered child's ear. He takes samples of your ointments and brings them to the church for examination, as if healing could ever truly be explained on a scroll. The truth is, you've always known more than you let on. You know which herbs can harm, which can heal, which can blur the line between them. But you've never used them wrongly. You've never whispered curses, yet the accusations linger, and you begin to doubt yourself. You wonder if healing is worth the risk. But then another mother knocks quietly, in the middle of the night. Her child is feverish again, burning hotter by the minute. She doesn't care about the priest's warnings or the village whispers. She trusts only you. And so you pick up your basket, slip out the door, and go to help once more, because your herbs were never hexes, and your hands were always meant to heal. Every village has stories about babies born under bad stars, children with birthmarks shaped like storms, strange eyes that gleam in the dark, or bodies that don't move as expected. You've delivered many of them, and though you know such marks mean nothing evil, the villagers always believe otherwise. They see omens, they see curses, and they always see you standing there, hands covered in birth blood, watching quietly. You remember the first marked child you delivered. A small girl born with a red stain covering half her face, bright as berries crushed underfoot. You marveled at her strength, at the way she screamed life into the room. But the mother turned away, eyes filled with horror, whispering prayers you'd never heard before. The father stood rigid, fists clenched. They didn't see life. They saw misfortune, punishment, sin. Soon, the whole village whispered about the birthmark. "Did you see it?" they asked. "Was it the midwife's fault?" The questions multiplied like weeds. Some said you touched the mother too often, others that your herbs had stained the baby's skin. Ridiculous. But fear needs no logic, only fuel. And the child's mark became yours as surely as if it were burned onto your own face. Then came other children, a boy with an extra finger, twins joined at the hip, a baby whose eyes wouldn't open. Each time you braced for the whispers, the glances, the suspicion. You saw parents hide their babies beneath heavy blankets, ashamed. You heard villagers blame you for something as natural as rain or thunder. Each marked child became another scar on your reputation. You tried to explain, to teach. You spoke gently of nature's ways, of how the body sometimes surprises us. But the villagers didn't want reason. They wanted blame. They wanted a scapegoat for their fear. And each marked child deepened their distrust, made them watch you closer, made them whisper louder. Eventually, families began refusing your care. Fathers blocked your path. Mothers turned their backs. You were only called in the darkest moments, when no other midwife would come. And even then, they eyed you warily, watching for a slip, a sign, another mark to pin on you. You considered giving up, leaving, vanishing into another village, another life. But you couldn't, because even marked children deserve life, deserve warmth, deserve the steady hands of someone unafraid. And each time you lifted another newborn, marked or not, you remembered why you stayed, because you knew the truth, even if no one else believed it. You endured their whispers, their stares, their accusations. You wore their suspicion like another layer of skin, and you kept going, because someone had to stand between superstition and life. Someone had to hold the marked children with hands that didn't tremble, eyes that didn't fear. Someone had to be there, even if it cost her everything. The knock at your door always comes in the dark hours, the time when fear feels stronger and whispers louder. You wake instantly, pulling on a shawl and grabbing your herb satchel. Outside stands a desperate face, pale in lantern glow. A father whose child is feverish, a sister whose sibling cannot breathe, a husband terrified that his wife won't survive the night. They come to you now, at midnight, because daylight is dangerous. In daylight, the village watches, whispers, judges. But under the cover of darkness, they need your forbidden help. You slip through the sleeping village, hooded and quiet, guided only by moonlight and memory. The houses you visit at night rarely greet you in daylight. Their doors stay closed, their eyes lowered when you pass. But in midnight desperation, they open their homes, their fears, their secrets, and you enter without hesitation, because you promised yourself you'd always heal, no matter the cost. Inside, you find pain and panic, quiet sobs muffled in blankets, desperate hands gripping yours. You move calmly, lighting candles, setting herbs to steep, whispering soft words that soothe more than any prayer could. You brew willow tea to ease a mother's pain, mix valerian root to calm shaking hands, crush thyme and honey to quiet a child's cough. The remedies you use are ancient, passed down through generations, written nowhere but in your bones. But even as your hands work steadily, you feel the risk. Each healing is a gamble. Each herb you use could later be twisted into accusation. They could say you brewed poison instead of healing teas, whispered curses instead of comfort. But you take that risk anyway, because midnight is your sanctuary, the one time your work isn't watched, measured, or feared. You save lives in these hidden hours. Children who would have choked their last breath, mothers who would have succumbed to fever, fathers who might have never stood again. But when dawn breaks, gratitude often fades. They fear what they needed. Ashamed, they turn to the woman whispered about as a witch. And so, by day, they pretend the midnight healing never happened. They cross the street, eyes downcast, voices silent. You become invisible again until darkness falls once more. Yet, despite their shame, you hold no bitterness. You know they're not ungrateful, just afraid. You know your remedies are gifts, not curses. Each time you slip back into the night, you reaffirm your choice to heal, even when misunderstood. Because midnight remedies aren't about thanks. They're about life, given quietly, bravely, beneath the eyes of a sleeping village. You hold knowledge older than churches, older than the village itself, secrets whispered down generations, hidden in old remedies and quiet chants. This knowledge helps you save lives, but it also threatens yours. The church and village elders watch carefully, fearful of anything beyond their control, suspicious of wisdom that doesn't come from their teachings. Your grandmother taught you the names of stars and plants, their powers and dangers. She showed you how to read signs in clouds and wind, predicting weather, illness, even birth. These teachings had nothing to do with magic or demons, only nature and careful observation. But try telling that to those who fear what they cannot understand. To them, your knowledge is dangerous, heretical, forbidden. The priest once confronted you, suspicious and stern, holding up bundles of herbs from your pantry. He asked about each one, voice accusing, eyes sharp. You explained gently that mugwort calms nerves, that foxglove can strengthen hearts if used carefully, that juniper berries cleanse wounds. But he saw only danger. He called your knowledge unholy, threatened you with exile, or worse. Yet, despite threats, you continued quietly. You hid herbs beneath floorboards, kept journals written in codes only you understood. You taught yourself how to disguise your remedies as simple cooking spices, common teas, harmless ointments. and you kept your deepest secrets inside your memory, safe from prying eyes. But no secret stays hidden forever. Eventually, someone always sees something. Sees you gathering herbs at strange hours, hears you whisper ancient words, notices a patient who recovers unexpectedly, quickly, and fear returns, swift and fierce. Suddenly, your knowledge is not healing, it's witchcraft. You become the village's darkest suspicion again. You've seen others lose everything for such forbidden knowledge. Homes burned, reputations destroyed, even lives taken. You felt suspicion tighten around you like a noose, suffocating and relentless. But still, you continue. You know the truth behind your knowledge, that it saves far more lives than it endangers, that it comes from kindness, not darkness. In quiet moments, you ask yourself if you should abandon it, bury it deep, forget the herbs and chants forever. But then a knock comes in the middle of the night. A pleading voice whispers urgently, and you know the truth. You can't turn away from healing. Forbidden or not, your knowledge matters. It saves, it comforts, and no threat, no accusation, no fear can ever truly take that from you. You never planned to pass your knowledge along. The risks always seemed too great, the costs too steep. But sometimes life makes choices for you. You noticed her long before she approached you, a quiet girl from the village, often lurking in doorways during births, watching with wide eyes, noting every careful movement you made. One day, she gathered enough courage to ask if she could learn from you, and despite every instinct to refuse, you found yourself nodding. Perhaps because you saw your younger self in her, curious, brave, and foolishly unafraid of risk. Your training began quietly, hidden in the shadows of your cottage, where prying eyes couldn't see. You taught her slowly, cautiously, testing her heart before trusting her with secrets. First came the herbs, rosemary for strength, lavender for sleep, willow bark for pain. She memorized them swiftly, her small hands careful as she mixed powders and prepared poultices under your watchful eye. Soon she began following you to births, standing quietly in corners, carrying your satchel, holding nervous hands, wiping brows damp with sweat. She saw both joy and grief, life and loss, strength and fragility. And she understood quickly that being a midwife wasn't simply about birth, but about navigating the tangled threads of fear, faith, and superstition that ran through the village. Yet, as you trained her, you felt the weight of responsibility heavy on your shoulders. Teaching her meant putting her in danger, passing on skills considered dangerous, even heretical. Every whispered secret felt like a burden. Every herb you named, every chant you taught her made you wonder if you were sealing her fate as surely as your own. One night, after a particularly difficult birth, you found her sitting alone, shaking, tears in her eyes. "Am I strong enough?" she asked, her voice small and frightened. You wanted to reassure her, to promise safety, but you couldn't lie. "Strength isn't never feeling afraid," you told her gently. "Strength is walking through fear because you know someone needs you." Slowly, your apprentice grew into her role. Her hands steadied, her voice grew stronger, her eyes hardened with resolve. But you also saw the fear behind her bravery, the hesitation when whispers reached her ears about midwives accused of witchcraft. She knew the stories as well as you did, knew the risks she took each time she touched another woman's life. Then came the night she attended a birth alone for the first time. You waited anxiously, pacing the floor, your heart tangled in worry. Hours later, she returned, tired but triumphant. And in that moment, you knew she was ready. Yet your pride was mixed with sorrow, because passing on your knowledge meant passing on your burden, your fear, your danger. Still, you couldn't regret training her. She was your legacy, the quiet rebellion against fear and ignorance, proof that even in darkness, knowledge could still pass from woman to woman, generation to generation, carrying life forward despite all risks. You had given her something more than skills. You had given her courage. And somehow, despite everything, it felt worth it. Nothing prepares you for the moment when all your skill, experience, and care fail. You can see it coming sometimes, like a storm on the horizon, a difficult labor stretching too long, a heartbeat slowing beneath your fingertips, a fever burning hotter and faster than your remedies can soothe. But knowing doesn't make it easier when it happens. It starts with whispers, frantic prayers from family members pacing in the next room, silent pleas from the woman on the bed, eyes wide and frightened. Your hands work quickly, desperately, using every herb, chant, and technique you know. But the bleeding won't stop, the fever won't break, the child won't turn. Slowly, you realize what's happening and your heart sinks. You hold her hand tightly, leaning close, whispering comfort, even as you feel the life draining from her. Sometimes she asks you directly, eyes searching yours. Am I dying? You want to lie, to promise she'll be fine, but honesty has always been your silent vow. So you say gently, I'm here. I won't leave you. It's not an answer, but it's all you have to give. When the mother slips away, it feels like your own breath leaves with her. The room goes quiet, heavy with loss. You sit there stunned, her hand limp in yours, grief sharp in your throat. You hear the cries from the next room, the husband collapsing, the sisters weeping, and you brace yourself. Because no matter how hard you tried, how much you gave, they always look to you first. And in their eyes, your failure becomes something darker, a choice, a curse, proof that you're not a healer, but a danger. You walk out quietly, head lowered, heart broken. The family doesn't meet your eyes. They pull away, afraid your touch is poison now. Outside, the village murmurs. Was it her herbs? Her chants? Did she cause it deliberately? The whispers turn quickly to accusations. And no matter how many mothers you've saved, how many children you've delivered safely, losing one mother stains everything you've done. You return to your home, haunted by the mother's face, her voice, her trust in you. You replay every moment, every choice, wondering if you could have done more. Sleep avoids you. Guilt and grief are your constant companions, heavier than chains. You question yourself endlessly. Did you do something wrong? Was there some herb you forgot? Some chant left unsaid? Yet even in your darkest moments, you know the truth. Some deaths simply happen, no matter how hard you fight. You are human, not divine, bound by limits of flesh and skill. But accepting that truth never eases the burden. Each mother lost is a scar, deep and permanent, carved into your memory, a reminder of your fragility, your humanity. Still, when the next knock comes, timid but desperate, you rise again. You push grief aside, gather your satchel, and return to your work. Because even after loss, mothers still need you. And though each loss leaves you shaken and scarred, each life you save reminds you why you endure, why you walk willingly into the next birth, risking everything again. The moment of birth never loses its wonder for you. No matter how many births you've attended, no matter how many children you've held, that first gasp, that sharp, fragile cry slicing through the silence, it still moves something deep within your heart. It is hope, raw and beautiful, an affirmation of life in a world often darkened by fear and suspicion. As you cradle the newborn, skin slick and warm, lungs announcing their arrival with stubborn determination, you remember why you continue, despite all risks and burdens. Each first cry is different. Some children scream boldly, filling the room instantly with their strength. Others whimper softly, hesitant at first, testing the air carefully before their voice grows stronger. Each cry tells you something about the child, their spirit, their resilience, their readiness to embrace life. And each cry reassures you, telling you that despite your fears, your herbs, chants, and whispered prayers were worth it. Life has once again triumphed. As you clean and swaddle the newborn, your heart feels lighter than it has in days. The mother, exhausted yet relieved, watches you closely, trust glowing quietly in her eyes. In these precious moments, suspicion fades, replaced by gratitude. You are not feared or accused now. You are simply the woman who helped usher in new life, who held the mother's hand, who whispered courage when she needed it most. These brief moments of peace feel like small miracles, rare, precious, and fleeting. Yet as joyful as this first cry is, you never forget that your work isn't done. You watch carefully, noting each breath, each tiny movement. You examine fingers and toes, counting silently, checking eyes and ears, searching for signs of health or trouble. Because, while the village may see birth as an event, you know it's a delicate process, fragile and ongoing. Your vigilance never relaxes, even as you gently hand the child to the waiting mother. In the village, word of a new birth spreads quickly. Neighbors visit, bringing gifts and good wishes. They glance at you, acknowledging your presence with quiet nods, respectful yet distant. They praise the mother's bravery, marvel at the child's beauty, but rarely mention your part. Still, you accept their silence as gratitude enough. Because your reward isn't praise, it's knowing that life has continued, that another child has entered the world safely. Walking home afterward, you feel both weary and fulfilled. Your hands ache, your back is stiff, your mind heavy with memories, good and bad. But the sound of that first cry lingers, echoing gently in your thoughts. A reminder of why you chose this path, why you endure whispers and suspicions. Each first cry is proof that you are needed, that your quiet courage matters, that your gentle hands, your calm voice, your steady presence make a difference. Tomorrow, accusations and suspicions may return. The villagers might whisper again, remembering their fears. But tonight, beneath stars that have witnessed countless first breaths, you find peace. Because in a child's first cry, you find your purpose reaffirmed. And that is enough to keep you walking forward, strong and unafraid. For a midwife, childbirth is more than the quiet miracle villagers imagine. It's a battleground, fraught with risk, fear, and struggle. You enter each birth ready for anything. A prolonged labor, a tangled cord, a fevered mother. You prepare yourself mentally, your satchel packed with remedies, your heart braced for whatever lies ahead. Because in these humble cottages, amidst quiet prayers and whispered fears, the struggle for life is fought fiercely, moment by moment. Sometimes the battle begins quickly, panic flooding the room as complications emerge. Other times it's slower, exhaustion creeping in as hours drag by, each minute feeling heavier. You stay calm, voice steady, guiding the mother through pain and fear, reminding her gently yet firmly that she is strong, capable, brave. Your hands work tirelessly, positioning the mother, preparing remedies, keeping your own anxieties carefully hidden behind quiet encouragement. Yet no matter your skill or preparation, each birth holds uncertainty. You've seen mothers suddenly weaken, their breaths shallow, their skin pale. You've felt your heart race when a child emerges silent, unmoving. In those terrifying moments, your battle shifts, against time, against fear, against doubt. You push panic aside, acting swiftly, clearing airways, warming tiny bodies, willing fragile hearts to beat. You refuse to surrender, fighting fiercely for every life. Around you, family members pace anxiously, whispering prayers or curses. Sometimes fathers shout accusations, desperate for someone to blame. Mothers beg softly for mercy, eyes wide with fear. Their panic becomes another challenge, another part of the battle you must calm, reassure, and manage carefully, even as you fight your own internal struggles. Yet amidst chaos, there are moments of victory so powerful, they silence every doubt. A newborn finally gasping, a mother smiling weakly, eyes filled with exhausted relief. You feel triumph swell in your chest, gratitude for another battle won. But these moments don't last. You quickly return to vigilance, carefully checking for hidden dangers, quietly preparing remedies in case something else goes wrong. When the birth finally ends, you emerge quietly, feeling worn and bruised, as if you physically fought through the hours. Your hands tremble slightly, your heartbeat still racing. You smile gently at relieved family members, silently accepting thanks, even if grudgingly given. Because you know how fragile their gratitude can be, how quickly they can turn suspicious again. Birth is your battleground, but so is village trust, respect, survival itself. You return home, exhausted yet alert, preparing to face whispers or accusations that might follow. Because though you've won the battle for life tonight, your war for acceptance, safety, respect continues every day. You fight quietly, bravely, knowing every birth could shift the balance again, yet you never surrender. Because even when birth is a battleground, you remain a quiet warrior, strong enough to face each battle head-on, unafraid. Every day as a midwife in the medieval world is a choice, a deliberate decision to step past the whispers, accusations, and threats, and choose life instead. You wake each morning knowing what waits outside your door. Suspicion, danger, misunderstanding. Yet you open that door anyway because life demands courage, and the mothers who trust you deserve someone brave enough to face the darkness alongside them. Some days, fear feels heavy, pressing on your chest, making every step harder. You hear the whispers clearly, feel the villagers' gazes following you, see accusations hiding behind polite nods and strained smiles. You sense their unease, their quiet belief that you're dangerous, tainted by forbidden knowledge, yet you refuse to let their fear become your own. You remind yourself why you chose this path, not for praise or respect, but to help women who would otherwise face their most vulnerable moments alone. You remember the countless mothers who trusted you with their lives, their secrets, their children. You recall gentle thanks whispered quietly after safe births, small gifts of gratitude secretly left on your doorstep. Each memory strengthens your resolve, reminding you that the lives you save far outweigh the risks you face. Fear may surround you, but courage lives within you, burning quietly yet fiercely. Yet the choice isn't easy. Each knock at your door in the night brings anxiety along with urgency. Each whispered accusation feels like another scar. You wonder often if courage alone can sustain you, if someday fear might finally overwhelm you. Yet each birth you attend reminds you of the stakes, that without your bravery, mothers and babies would suffer, families would break, lives would end too soon. Choosing life over fear means accepting constant uncertainty. It means smiling calmly when villagers whisper, holding your head high when the priest watches you suspiciously, walking bravely into cottages even when you sense mistrust. It means continuing your work despite threats, despite knowing any birth could be twisted into accusation. You choose life not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Each mother who survives, each newborn's first cry, each relieved smile after difficult labor reinforces your choice. You know the cost, yet you pay willingly, knowing every life you save is worth every risk you take. Fear may shadow you daily, but it never truly overtakes you, because courage is not the absence of fear, it's choosing to move forward despite it, every single day. And so you keep walking, satchel in hand, herbs at your side, ready to face whatever waits beyond your doorstep. You keep choosing life, courage, and compassion, every day, with every step, one brave decision at a time. Your legacy isn't carved in monuments or recorded in history books. It's not whispered with awe or praised loudly in village squares. Instead, it lives quietly, powerfully, in the countless lives you've touched. Your legacy is the child breathing softly in its cradle, the mother sleeping peacefully after birth, the apprentice carrying forward your knowledge and courage. You've shaped the future gently, one birth, one woman, one whispered secret at a time. The village may never fully understand your contributions. They might always see you as mysterious, suspicious, even dangerous. Yet, within every family whose child you've helped deliver, whose mother you've comforted, your legacy grows. It's passed quietly through generations, remembered softly in stories told at family firesides. They may never speak your name aloud with praise, but they know deep in their hearts that you made their lives possible. Your apprentice carries forward your knowledge bravely, secretly. She remembers your lessons about herbs, chants, courage, and compassion. Each mother she helps is touched by your legacy, even if unknowingly. She continues your quiet rebellion against fear, suspicion, ignorance. And someday, perhaps, she'll choose her own apprentice, passing your wisdom forward again, quietly yet powerfully. Your legacy is strength in moments of fear, calm amidst panic, courage when suspicion feels overwhelming. It's kindness whispered gently when mothers need comfort most, bravery shown quietly when villagers watch suspiciously. Your legacy is refusing to surrender despite threats, despite loss, despite accusation. It's choosing compassion and healing over fear every single day. You may not see your legacy clearly now, amidst whispers, threats, and constant struggle. But someday, when your apprentice quietly takes over your role, when villagers secretly miss your steady presence, your legacy will become clearer. They'll remember your strength, your bravery, your unwavering choice to help despite risk. And even if your name fades from memory, your legacy will continue in every life touched, every mother comforted, every child safely brought into the world. Because a midwife's legacy isn't measured by praise or recognition. It's measured quietly, gently, in lives saved, families kept whole, secrets whispered softly through generations. You've changed the world quietly yet profoundly, one life at a time, shaping a future brighter because of your quiet courage and gentle strength. This, then, is your legacy. A quiet triumph, unspoken but undeniable, felt gently in every heartbeat, every breath, every life your brave hands have touched.